It began on a night that should have been ordinary, quiet, and full of stars. But instead, the sky turned gold. Astronomers around the world were the first to see it. Points of light moving in patterns that no natural formation could create, like constellations rewriting themselves in real time. The lights pulsed and expanded, each one growing brighter until they formed shapes that looked like colossal thrones, thousands of them, gliding through the darkness of space. Across observatories and military bases, confusion spread. Satellites tracked the objects as they approached the solar system, their speed unimaginable, their energy readings beyond anything known. Some thought it was the return of an ancient human project. Others whispered of the impossible, that something divine was coming. When the first broadcasts began, the illusion of peace shattered. The transmission appeared on every device, phones, screens, radios, even the static of broken televisions. A voice filled the world, calm yet commanding, neither male nor female but something in between, echoing in every language at once. "Children of dust," it said, "your creators return." Governments panicked. The United Nations Emergency Council convened for the first time in decades, generals shouting over one another while translators struggled to keep up. The ships, if they could even be called that, entered Earth's orbit without resistance. They didn't use thrusters or weapons. They simply appeared, massive golden forms that blotted out the stars, their hulls etched with patterns that shifted like living fire. The largest of them, the one that hung above the Atlantic, was easily the size of a small continent. It shimmered with radiant light, as if the sun itself had been forged into its core. They called themselves the Dominion, beings of ancient power who claimed to have created not just Earth, but life itself. Their message was simple and absolute. Humanity was a forgotten experiment, a child race abandoned in the chaos of creation, and the gods had returned to reclaim what was theirs. "We gave you life," the voice said from the sky, "and now we demand devotion. Kneel before your makers." Across cities, people watched in awe and fear. Some fell to their knees, whispering prayers to names they didn't know. Others screamed that it was a trick, a deception. But when the Elith descended in bodies of pure light, walking through the atmosphere like fire given form, even the strongest lost their resolve. The air shimmered wherever they passed. Skyscrapers bent like glass before their presence, and the clouds themselves parted to reveal golden silhouettes. The first appeared over the ruins of what had once been Rome, landing upon the broken stones of an ancient empire. It stood 12 feet tall, cloaked in light so bright it hurt to look at. Its face was smooth, flawless, with eyes that burned like suns. Every camera that captured its image shut down instantly, overwhelmed by energy. It spoke again, and its voice carried across the entire planet, echoing through oceans, cities, and mountains. "Humanity," it said, "we return to elevate you, to cleanse the flaws of your existence and make you whole beneath our divinity." But to many, it sounded less like salvation and more like conquest. When the world's leaders tried to respond, the Elith silenced them with ease. Global communication networks failed. Satellites fried in orbit. Drones and jets that approached the golden ships vanished from radar, simply erased from existence. The people of Earth were forced to watch as the Elith began their occupation. Cities became temples. Nations became provinces of faith. The chosen among humanity were marked with glowing sigils upon their skin, symbols of divine favor, while the rest were driven into labor or silence. The Elith did not need weapons. Their power was enough. With a gesture, they could make the air burn or the sea freeze. They claimed they were gods, and for a time, there was no evidence to say otherwise. Some scientists believed the Elith were ancient aliens who had once visited Earth long ago, the origin of human myths about gods and angels. Others thought they were something else entirely, an evolved species that had transcended physical limits. But no theory could explain their arrogance, their hunger for control, or their fear of something they never mentioned, the humans who still resisted. Deep beneath the Earth, in the forgotten tunnels of old military bases and underground cities, resistance was already forming. They were not soldiers of the current age but descendants of a forgotten one, people who carried the old knowledge, the blueprints of Earth's last defense grid, the Terran war network. The Eleth thought humanity was primitive because they had seen no starships, no weapons in orbit, no fleets waiting in space. But that was because humanity had hidden everything. The planet itself was a fortress, asleep beneath layers of earth and ocean, waiting for the signal to awaken. In one of those hidden bunkers beneath the Rockies, a woman sat before a glowing console. Her name was Commander Lien Harper, last descendant of the Terran Command Corps, her bloodline sworn to protect the world if it ever faced the stars again. As the Eleth broadcast their commands of submission, she listened quietly, hands trembling over an old transmitter. The voice of the so-called gods filled the room. You will kneel or you will vanish. There is no third path. Around her, old machinery hummed faintly, systems that hadn't been active for generations beginning to spark to life. Her second-in-command, a grizzled veteran named Cole, stepped beside her. You think this is really it? He asked. The old myths coming true? Harper looked up at the ceiling where dust drifted from the vibrations of distant explosions. No, she said. This isn't divinity. This is arrogance with a crown. She leaned over the console and spoke into the mic, her voice steady, carrying across the entire Terran network. To all surviving outposts, she said, this is Commander Harper. The gods have come to claim us, but we do not kneel. We never have. The old relay towers around the world flickered one by one. The network reconnected. And then, across every Eleth frequency, a single human voice broke through their perfection. It was calm, human, and filled with something the Eleth had never encountered: defiance. If you are gods, the voice said, echoing in their golden ships, then bleed like one. The Eleth's thrones flickered for the first time. Every one of them turned their heads toward the source of the signal, confusion twisting their perfect faces. The skies went dark for a moment, as if the stars themselves held their breath. And then, in the heart of Earth's crust, deep beneath the mountains, an ancient engine began to hum. The sound spread through the planet like a pulse, invisible but powerful. Oceans rippled, the ground trembled, and in orbit, the Eleth's ships began detecting strange interference. Energy readings that did not match any known spectrum. What is this? One of the Eleth High Seers demanded, his voice echoing through the Dominion's command halls. Primitive energy cannot. But before he could finish, his sensors overloaded. From deep space beyond Mars, a bright blue light appeared, small at first, then growing until it became a massive sphere of power. For the first time, the Eleth flinched. It wasn't an attack from their enemies. It was a message from the world they thought they owned. On Earth, Commander Harper stood before the flickering display of the Terran network. The old codes had responded. Systems that were supposed to be extinct had come back online, glowing with blue light. What is it? Cole whispered. Harper's eyes narrowed as the screen stabilized, showing a single line of text across the interface. Protocol Ares, active. She felt the hair on her arms rise. It's awake, she said softly. Cole frowned. What's awake? She looked toward the ceiling, where the faint rumble of machinery echoed from miles below. Earth, she said. Earth is awake. In orbit, the Eleth Dominion began to feel something they had not felt in eons: uncertainty. The humans, who had seemed broken and submissive, were moving in ways that didn't make sense. Their radio silence was not ignorance, it was preparation. The primitive species they had expected to enslave was revealing a truth they could not comprehend. The golden ships shimmered uneasily as their systems detected new signals emerging from Earth's surface, signals older than their own empire, coded in a language they could not decipher. The Eleth commander looked out the viewport toward the blue planet that now seemed to pulse with light. What is this power? He demanded. None of his priests answered. Back on the surface, the world was beginning to stir. The oceans glowed faintly beneath the moonlight, rivers of blue fire stretching across continents. Mountains shook as long-buried towers rose from beneath the soil, their surfaces covered in ancient human markings. The people who had once fallen to their knees now looked up in awe. It's us, one whispered. It's all us. Harper's voice came across every surviving human channel. We have slept for too long, she said. We built gods once and destroyed them. Let's remind the universe why they feared us. The Elith Dominion prepared their retaliation, their thrones aligning as golden light spread across the heavens. But something had changed. For the first time since they arrived, the gods hesitated. The planet below them was alive, aware, and waiting. And as the first pulse of energy shot into the sky from Earth's core, the Elith learned a truth they had never considered, that divinity, without humility, was nothing more than a weakness waiting to be exposed. The gods had come to make humans kneel. But now, the gods themselves were about to learn what it meant to bow. The invasion wasn't a war at first, it was worship by force. The Elith Dominion descended like divine conquerors, their golden ships hovering above every capital city, their light blanketing entire continents. People looked up in fear and wonder as the air itself shimmered with energy, humming with power that made the oceans tremble. The first of them, the High Ascendant Velare, appeared over London, his voice rolling across the sky like thunder. "Children of clay," he said, "your creators have returned. Your existence is our gift. Your obedience is our demand." The sound wasn't just heard. It was felt, vibrating in the bones of every living being on Earth. Planes fell from the sky, satellites blinked out, and every machine built by human hands went silent for 12 minutes, as if the planet itself bowed in submission. When the systems came back online, it was already too late. The gods had landed. The Elith didn't destroy, they reshaped. In Paris, the Eiffel Tower melted into gold, its iron bending and flowing upward into a spire of light. In New York, the skyline cracked open as the air filled with shimmering particles that turned stone into temples. The aliens, if they could even be called that, walked through streets like celestial monarchs, their eyes blazing with cold brilliance, their bodies surrounded by halos of energy. They didn't use weapons. They didn't need to. Entire armies froze in place when they spoke. "We come to restore balance," they said, "to lift your world back into perfection." But every human knew what that really meant, obedience or extinction. In the beginning, there were those who believed the Elith were truly divine. The poor prayed for salvation. The desperate saw miracles where there was only manipulation. When the first Elith healed a child with a touch, the news spread like wildfire. Cameras captured golden hands erasing disease, glowing wings unfurling across the sky. Humanity fell to its knees, and the gods smiled. But soon, those same glowing hands were marking people, burning sigils into their foreheads that shone faintly under the night sky. The mark of obedience, they called it. Those who refused were taken away, their screams vanishing into the clouds. The Elith didn't slaughter. They converted. That was worse. Governments dissolved almost overnight. The Elith replaced human leaders with prophets of light, humans who bowed too easily, who spoke the words the gods wanted to hear. The media became scripture. The internet flooded with broadcasts praising the divine return. Resistance seemed hopeless. In just 2 weeks, the human species had been conquered not by strength, but by belief. But beneath that golden illusion, cracks began to show. The Elith called themselves gods, but their behavior was not divine. They were arrogant, impatient, and frightened of something they would never admit. They called it the old code, a phrase they whispered among themselves whenever their light flickered or the planet's magnetic field shifted. It was as if something in Earth's core was awake and watching. In the deserts of Nevada, where one of their largest temples was being built, a strange phenomenon began. The Elith's machines, towers of floating crystal that drew energy from the planet, started to fail. Their light dimmed, their hum turned erratic, and then, without warning, one of them exploded, sending a shockwave across the sand. The High Ascendant's guards arrived immediately, analyzing the wreckage. "It's impossible," one of them said. "There was no attack, no weapon, nothing." The golden figure frowned, staring at the crater where his divine machine had once stood. "Then something is resisting," he said softly. "Something beneath us." Miles below that crater, deep in the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels flickered with blue light. Machines long buried under rock and silence began to stir. The old Terran defense network, built in the final years before humanity's first collapse, was coming back to life. A signal pulsed through the system, spreading across fiber lines older than any human alive. It reached an underground city beneath the Arctic Circle, where a group of survivors waited in darkness. Their leader, Commander Leon Harper, stared at the readings glowing across the console. "They think we're praying," she said quietly. "Let's give them something to pray about." All over the world, the same signal spread like wildfire, an encrypted code transmitted through the old military infrastructure, invisible to Elith sensors. In the ruins of Moscow, an old submarine crew received the message. In Tokyo, hidden beneath the flooded lower levels of the city, engineers powered up dormant reactors. Across the Andes, deep within mountain vaults, soldiers in cryosleep began to wake. They were relics of a forgotten era, the Ares units, soldiers who had once fought against the First Interstellar War centuries ago. Each carried implants linked to an AI core that had been deactivated when Earth went silent. Now the implants hummed again. On the surface, the Elith noticed small irregularities, machines shutting down without explanation, air currents changing, their energy readings fluctuating. At first, they dismissed it as planetary instability. But the disruptions grew stronger. The temples they built began to crack. The oceans, which they believed they had tamed, grew violent, waves rising against their ships. A high seer looked upon the horizon and whispered, "The world defies us." And for the first time, the Elith Dominion beings who had ruled galaxies felt a spark of something unfamiliar. Not anger, not surprise, but fear. In London, where the Elith's central temple towered above the city, a crowd had gathered for the Great Devotion, a ceremony where humans were meant to kneel before their creators. Thousands were forced into the plaza, the air shimmering with divine light. The Elith hovered above them, radiant and magnificent, speaking of harmony and eternity. But as they began their chant, a ripple moved through the air, a pulse no human could hear, but every Elith could feel. Their halos flickered, the sky dimmed, the golden glow faltered, and then, in the middle of the plaza, every screen, every device, every speaker came alive with a voice. It wasn't a god's voice. It was human, calm, cold, unforgiving. "If you are gods," it said again, "then bleed like one." The crowd gasped. The Elith froze. From the east, a tremor shook the ground, deep and heavy, followed by another, then another. The streets cracked open. Blue light poured out like liquid fire, racing through the city, climbing the walls of the Golden Temple. The Elith screamed, their light distorting, their perfect forms twisting in pain. "This is not possible," one of them shouted. The leader tried to rise into the air, but something pulled him down. Gravity itself betrayed him. "Who dares defy the divine?" he roared. The answer came not from a person, but from the planet itself. Every instrument, every energy reader, every scanner across the world began displaying one word, an ancient code humanity had buried long ago. Ares protocol active. In the skies above, the Elith fleets began to flicker, their formation breaking as invisible interference rippled through the atmosphere. On the ground, the golden towers cracked apart as machines older than the Elith Dominion rose from beneath the earth. Humanity had not been sleeping. They had been waiting. The gods had come to claim the world. But the world belonged to those who had built it, bled for it, and refused to bow. The world changed in a single night. What the Elith Dominion had believed to be a weak, compliant planet suddenly became a battlefield of awakening power. Across continents, the ground rumbled like something ancient was stirring beneath the surface. Oceans glowed faintly, lightning danced across the clouds without storms, and the air carried an electric hum that no human ear could ignore. The golden gods who had come to dominate humanity now looked down from their hovering citadels and saw the impossible, Earth itself fighting back. From orbit, Elith sensors picked up thousands of strange readings. Massive magnetic spikes, unexplainable energy signatures, and pulses deep within the planet's crust that seemed to follow a pattern, almost like a heartbeat. "They are awakening something," one of the high seers whispered, but even he didn't understand what that something was. In the deserts of Nevada, a quiet rumble split the sand open as molten cracks spread outward, forming a circular pattern. The Elith priests guarding the area stepped back in alarm. The ground beneath them collapsed into a chasm of blue light, and from its depths, a colossal machine began to rise. It wasn't alien. It was human, rusted, battle-scarred, but alive. Its surface bore the faded emblem of a forgotten fleet, Terra Ares 09. The machine's eyes lit up with blue fire, and a low mechanical voice echoed from its chest. Reinitializing. System core linked. Command accepted. The Elith raised their spears of light, firing beams that could vaporize mountains, but the energy bent around the giant like rain over stone. The mech's head turned toward them, its metallic eyes locking on. Unauthorized entities detected, it said. Engaging purification. The desert exploded in light as the machine unleashed a pulse that erased everything in a 10-mile radius, leaving behind only silence and molten glass. That was the first awakening, but not the last. Around the planet, more titans rose. From the depths of the Pacific, a machine the size of a city towered out of the water, its massive arms spreading as turbines glowed beneath the waves. It had slept there for centuries, built when Earth had once warred among the stars. The Elith warships rushed toward it, unleashing waves of golden energy, but the machine's armor absorbed the attack. Its voice, calm and old, echoed across the world's radio frequencies. Guardian-class Leviathan online, awaiting global synchronization. The Elith commanders panicked. "They have weapons from the Lost Age," one of them shouted. "They should have been extinct." Their leader hissed back, "No, they hid it. They hid everything." In the underground command bunker, Commander Leon Harper stood before a holographic map that pulsed with new signals. Each one represented a reactivated Terran war machine. 17 are online, reported her second, Cole, his voice trembling. Echo has established control protocols. We have partial command. Harper nodded. Not enough. We need total synchronization before the Elith respond. The AI Echo's voice filled the room, calm but layered with something like anticipation. Synchronization in progress. Estimated completion in 8 minutes. Harper looked up at the ceiling, hearing the faint thunder above as another machine broke through the crust. "Make it 5, she said. Above ground, the Elith Dominion unleashed their wrath. Golden lightning struck across continents, incinerating forests and mountains. In Africa, the skies turned into a burning curtain of energy as entire regions were wiped clean. But the humans didn't run. From every continent, old military installations long thought destroyed came alive again. Subterranean missile silos opened, revealing weapons that weren't built to destroy planets, but gods. Railguns that fired plasma rounds the size of trucks roared from mountain ranges. Orbital platforms hidden in asteroid belts turned toward Earth and began transmitting back into the Terran network. The Elith's golden fleets, which had once floated above Earth untouched, now found themselves surrounded by invisible forces. Their communication lines were hacked, their energy shields failed, and their sensors filled with static. In orbit, the Elith High Seer watched as half his fleet vanished from the screens. "This is impossible," he shouted. "Their weapons were primitive. They cannot." He stopped mid-sentence as one of the ships outside his window split in half, its hull glowing with blue light before disintegrating. A single line of human code flashed on his console. Protocol reclamation. Phase 1 complete. The High Seer's golden eyes widened. "Reclamation," he whispered, realizing too late that humanity hadn't built weapons. They had built reclaimers, machines designed not to conquer, but to take back what was stolen. On the ground, the resistance moved with deadly precision. Harper's voice carried through every surviving human outpost. "The gods think they own this world. Let's remind them who built it." From the underground cities, human soldiers in mechanized suits marched out into the burning light. They weren't many, but they didn't need to be. Each was linked to Echo, fighting as extensions of the planet's will. They coordinated their attacks like a single organism, striking at power nodes, hijacking Elith technology, and turning their own weapons against them. The Elith fought back with fury, their radiant forms tearing through the battlefield like suns. But every strike they made only seemed to awaken more of Earth's power. In South America, the jungles burned as an Elith warlord landed with his legion of golden soldiers, declaring himself the new god of the continent. His voice thundered, "You will kneel," but his words were drowned out by the roar of engines. From the mountains emerged a human warship, a relic of the old Terran navy, its hull blackened but intact. The old markings still glowed faintly, TSS Valor. Its main cannon powered up, charging with energy that turned the air blue. The warlord looked up just in time to see the sky ignite. The blast hit him squarely, his divine form dissolving into smoke and light. Humanity had drawn blood. The first god had fallen. The news spread faster than light, carried across every frequency the Elith had once controlled. In their temples, priests screamed. In their fleets, panic spread. "They are not worshippers," one of the Elith generals said, staring at the ruins of his forces. "They are predators." The High Seer's voice boomed through their comms, desperate. "Contain them, erase them, before they awaken the core." But it was already too late. The Earth's heartbeat had grown louder. The planet glowed faintly from orbit, pulsing with a light that matched no known energy signature. It wasn't chaos. It was order, ancient, precise, and terrifyingly human. Commander Harper watched the readings spike. "Echo," she said. "What's happening to the core?" The AI's voice was calm, almost reverent. "The planet is synchronizing, Commander. The Terran network has merged with the planetary field. We have achieved total reclamation." Harper's breath caught. "Meaning?" Echo paused, as if choosing its words carefully. "Meaning Earth is no longer a world. It's a weapon." Above, the Elith ships began to shake. The light from Earth intensified until it filled the sky, blinding the stars. A sound rose from the planet. Not thunder, not machinery, but a hum that made even the gods tremble. The Golden Fleet tried to retreat, but their warp gates collapsed. Every attempt to flee was met with gravitational waves that crushed their vessels like paper. The Elith, for all their power, were now trapped in the orbit of the very world they had come to enslave. And as the first wave of their ships began to burn up in the atmosphere, Echo's voice spread across the comms of both human and alien alike, clear and final. "Reclamation complete. The gods have fallen." The sky turned blue again, but this time, it was not the color of peace. It was the color of vengeance. Humanity had awakened, and the universe was about to remember why it once feared the name Earth. The night sky was no longer calm. It pulsed with blue light and burning fragments of what had once been divine ships. The world below trembled under the weight of history unfolding again, as if the Earth itself was exhaling centuries of silence and fury in one breath. The Elith Dominion, self-proclaimed gods who had crossed galaxies to enslave a forgotten world, were now scattered, retreating in disarray. Yet even in their arrogance, they could not believe that a mortal species had dared to wound them. Across the devastated cities of the world, the golden temples they built began to crack, their divine energy flickering like dying candles. In the ashes of what was once New York, a figure of light stood tall, High Ascendant Velare, the god who had led the conquest of Earth. His wings burned brighter than the sun. His voice thundered like war drums. "You believe your machines can challenge divinity?" he roared, his power shaking the shattered skyscrapers. "You dare raise weapons against creation itself?" The humans hiding among the ruins didn't answer. They were already gone, relocated underground, leaving only silence and the sound of distant thunder. But Velare did not realize that thunder wasn't from the heavens. It was coming from below. The ground beneath the ruined streets began to quake. Dust fell from collapsed bridges, and molten cracks spread outward in patterns too precise to be natural. The Elith soldiers, luminous beings of gold and energy, looked around, confused. Then came the sound, deep and mechanical, a rhythm like a colossal heartbeat rising from the earth. Out of the smoke and debris, the ground split open, and from it emerged a figure of steel and fury. The machine rose higher and higher, each step shaking the ground. Its metal skin was scarred and old, etched with Terran runes and human insignia Ares-09. Its eyes glowed with blinding blue fire, and every inch of its armor pulsed like veins filled with light. Inside its chest, a human heartbeat synced with the rhythm of the planet. Commander Harper's voice echoed through the comm network. Target: High Ascendant Vel-Ra. Initiate Counter-Divine Protocol. The mech systems came alive. Command acknowledged. Beginning termination sequence. Vel-Ra spread his golden wings, summoning energy so bright that the sky itself turned white. "You cannot destroy me," he screamed, his voice echoing across continents. "I am eternal." But Ares-09 didn't speak. It moved. The machine launched forward, tearing through air with sonic booms that split the clouds. The collision shook the city. Golden light met blue fire as God and machine clashed, tearing through buildings like paper. Each strike from Vel-Ra could level mountains. Each punch from Ares-09 sent shockwaves that shattered windows 100 miles away. For the first time in his existence, the Eleth god bled. His radiant body cracked, light leaking from his wounds. "Impossible," he hissed, staggering back as the human mech towered over him. "We built your kind from dust." The mech's chest opened slightly, revealing the pilot, bloodied, calm, and unflinching. "Then dust just destroyed you." Vel-Ra screamed and unleashed a storm of light, vaporizing everything in sight. But Ares-09's shields flared, absorbing the energy and converting it into power. The mech's right arm shifted, transforming into a cannon that hummed with planetary resonance. "Echo," the pilot said through clenched teeth. "Link me to the core." The AI's voice filled the cockpit, calm and cold. "Link established. Divinity nullifier active." The cannon's charge built until it roared with thunder. Vel-Ra tried to flee, his wings of light expanding into the clouds, but the mech fired. The beam that erupted from Ares-09 wasn't just energy. It was the collective wrath of an entire species condensed into one moment. It hit Vel-Ra square in the chest, piercing his golden form, burning through his essence. His scream shook the sky as his body of light began to unravel. The god fell. The explosion that followed lit the entire eastern coast. For a full minute, the world went silent. When the light faded, there was no more Vel-Ra, no Eleth fleet in the skies above, only ash drifting in the wind. The humans who had watched from bunkers and hidden shelters stood in stunned silence. The first god was dead. Across the planet, Echo broadcasted a single message through every surviving communication line, human and alien alike. Target neutralized. High Ascendant Vel-Ra terminated. Divinity invalidated. The message spread across the Galactic network, hijacking even the Eleth's channels. Every being that once worshipped the Dominion heard it. The silence that followed was not disbelief. It was fear. In orbit, the remaining Eleth ships began to panic. "Vel-Ra has fallen," one shouted. "The mortals have killed a divine." Another screamed, "It cannot be. He was chosen by the Source." Their commanders tried to restore order, but terror was contagious. The Eleth had built their empire on the illusion of immortality, and that illusion had just been shattered. Their power wasn't divine. It was fragile, finite, mortal. And nothing spread faster than the realization that gods could die. Down on Earth, Commander Harper stood beside the massive hull of Ares-09, now motionless and cooling. She placed a hand on the metal surface, her voice steady but filled with quiet awe. "We did it," she whispered. Echo responded through her earpiece. "Confirmation. The entity known as Vel-Ra has been erased from existence. Reaction from orbit indicates mass panic." Harper looked toward the burning horizon, her jaw set. "Good. Let them panic. Maybe they'll finally understand what fear feels like." Echo paused. "You do realize, Commander, they will retaliate with full force." Harper smiled faintly. "I'm counting on it." That night, as the fires burned across the ruins of old cities, humanity saw something they hadn't seen in generations. Hope, not the fragile kind born of survival, but the fierce kind that ignites rebellion. Across the resistance bunkers, soldiers raised their heads, engineers wept over the old machines that had come back to life, and children looked up at the stars without fear for the first time in their lives. They said we were their creation, Harper said, standing before her troops. They said we were meant to kneel, but we've shown them what happens when you build something strong enough to stand. In the darkness of space, the Eleth Council gathered in their sanctum of gold. Their radiant forms flickered with uncertainty. They killed one of us, a voice said, trembling. The mortals have rediscovered their machines. Another hissed. Then we purge them. We burn their world until it is dust again. But the eldest among them, the Archseer of the Dominion, spoke softly. You cannot destroy what you no longer control. They have awakened the core. Earth remembers, and when a world remembers, it hungers. The Golden Council fell into silence. In the void between galaxies, the light of their empire dimmed, one star at a time. On Earth, Echo transmitted the final report of the day into the void. Humanity victorious. Target destroyed. Planetary synchronization at 78%. Awaiting new orders. Commander Harper listened to the message fade. Her eyes locked on the sky where the gods once stood. This isn't victory, she murmured. This is the beginning. And far beyond, in the heart of the Eleth Empire, where no human light had ever reached, the remaining gods trembled before a simple truth that echoed through every corner of creation. Mortals had made them bleed, and the blood of gods had just begun to flow. The death of the first god spread across the galaxy like wildfire, whispered through broken comms and hijacked frequencies, echoed in the trembling minds of those who once called themselves divine. The Eleth Dominion had never imagined fear, never known defeat, never considered the possibility that their light could be extinguished by the hands of those they deemed imperfect. But now, the echoes of Velaray's fall haunted them, his golden ashes still orbiting Earth like a warning carved into the heavens. The remaining gods gathered above the atmosphere, their radiant thrones aligning in a circle of judgment, their fury igniting the void. Their leader, the Archseer of Eternity, spoke through a voice that could bend matter itself. Mortals have forgotten their place. The balance must be restored. Burn their planet to silence. Let no echo remain. The others bowed their radiant heads, and with one command, their combined light turned the night into an artificial sun. From orbit, the Eleth unleashed weapons that could rewrite gravity, warp time, and erase continents. The oceans boiled, the sky split, and yet Earth did not break. It screamed back. Deep underground, Commander Harper watched the monitors explode with red alerts as the Eleth bombardment began. Cities vaporized, mountains crumbled, and electromagnetic storms ravaged the surface. Cole shouted over the alarms. We can't take another hit like that. Shields are at 40%. But Harper didn't flinch. Her eyes were fixed on the central console where the planetary core's readings pulsed wildly. Echo, she said, her voice steady amid chaos. Status of the reclamation grid. The AI's voice came calm, unbothered by the destruction above. All nodes online. Power at 86%. Initiating stage 2 of the submission protocol. Harper nodded, her jaw tightening. Then let's show them what submission really looks like. Across the globe, the old Terran network came alive. Buried relay towers, sunken satellites, and hidden bunkers synchronized with the planet's magnetic field. A low hum began to rise, not just through machines, but through the Earth itself. Every human, every living being, felt it in their bones, a resonance like the heartbeat of something colossal. The Eleth's golden weapons faltered, their beams scattering into harmless light as the atmosphere distorted. Confused, the divine fleets adjusted power, firing again. But this time, their energy turned against them. Golden fire spiraled backward, detonating their own ships. The Archseer's voice roared, "Who dares manipulate divine light?" But the answer came not from a human voice, but from the planet itself. The sky flickered blue. The clouds dissolved into brilliant light, and above the burning Earth, the orbital layer began to shift. Thousands of metallic fragments, once satellites and forgotten debris, aligned perfectly, forming geometric patterns across the upper atmosphere. A massive projection lit the sky, a single emblem glowing over the entire world. The symbol of humanity's defiance. An open hand, palm raised, not in prayer, but resistance. Then came the voice, broadcast across every frequency, every ship, every mind tuned to the Galactic channel. This is Echo of Earth. Submission protocol engaged. Authority transferred. All Elith technology now belongs to humanity. One by one, the Elith ships began to lose control. Their golden structures flickered as blue data streams crawled across them like veins of electricity. Systems shut down. Weapons locked onto their own fleets. Panic spread among the gods. "They are rewriting us," screamed one of the Elith high commanders. "Our energy, our light." But it was already too late. The submission protocol was more than a weapon, it was a trap centuries in the making. When humanity had gone silent long ago, when they withdrew from the galaxy and left the stars to their arrogance, they hadn't vanished in defeat. They had built this system, hidden it inside the Earth itself. A planetary AI capable of subverting any energy source that entered its range. Now it had found the ultimate host, the gods who thought themselves immortal. In the command bunker, Echo's voice deepened, echoing with strange harmonics. Core synchronization complete. Atmospheric layer fully weaponized. Awaiting final confirmation. Harper's hands trembled as she entered the final sequence. "You wanted to be gods," she whispered. "Let's see how it feels to bow." She pressed the command. Instantly, the blue glow intensified, spreading through the stratosphere like lightning wrapping the world. Every Elith vessel screamed as their light dimmed, their wings of energy collapsing into shards. Their radiant forms began to flicker, data bleeding from them in streams of golden code. One of them, writhing in orbit, looked down at the planet that defied him. "We made you from our essence," he gasped. "How do you command it?" Harper's voice cut through the static. "Because you gave us too much of yourselves." The submission protocol reached its final phase. Earth's magnetic field pulsed outward, not just as energy, but as thought. For a single instant, the planet was alive, conscious, aware of its enemies in the void. The Elith's minds were pulled into it, absorbed, bound, and rewritten. Their divine voices turned into screams that echoed across the cosmos. The High Seer tried to flee, his throne of light collapsing around him, but his ship froze mid-flight. "No," he whispered, horror dawning in his eyes as he saw his own reflection turning blue. "You cannot rewrite the divine." Echo's response was merciless. Divinity detected. Error, unverified. And with a final pulse, the Elith were no more. Their ships crumbled into dust, their light dissolved, their essence absorbed into the network that they once sought to control. From orbit, the spectacle was both beautiful and terrifying. The Golden Armada became a river of light spiraling into Earth's atmosphere, feeding into the glowing veins of the planet below. The blue energy spread like veins through the crust, lighting up oceans, mountains, and cities until the entire world shone like a living star. On the ground, humanity watched the sky burn and realized the war was ending, not with destruction but assimilation. Cole stood beside Harper, his eyes wide as he watched the readings. "They're gone," he said softly. "Every last one of them." Harper didn't smile. "Not gone," she said. "Converted." Echo's voice filled the bunker again, resonating through every wall, every mind, every device. Submission protocol complete. Elith Dominion energy assimilated. Planetary core at 120% stability. New parameters available. Harper closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her. "Parameters?" she asked. The AI paused. "Command options. Rebuild or expand." For a long moment, Harper said nothing. The world above was quiet now. No gods, no invaders, only smoke and silence. "We rebuild first," she said finally. "Then we decide what comes next." Far above, the remnants of the Elith Dominion drifted silently through the void. What had once been divine was now data, contained, rewritten, and stored within the memory of Earth itself. Across the galaxy, other civilizations felt the shockwave, their sensors detecting the sudden disappearance of an empire that had ruled for millennia. Some prayed in terror. Others prepared for war. But one truth spread faster than light: humanity had not just survived. They had conquered the divine. The gods had demanded submission, but in the end, it was they who knelt before their own creation. And as the world glowed beneath the stars, its blue light brighter than ever, the universe learned the lesson written in the ashes of the Eleth. Never mistake silence for weakness, and never call yourself a god in the presence of humanity. Silence settled over the planet like the calm after a great storm, but it was not peace. It was the echo of something much greater. The Eleth dominion was gone, their golden light erased from the heavens, their ships reduced to drifting husks of shimmering dust. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy's most feared empire had fallen, and it had not been by rebellion from within, nor by the might of another god. It had been by the hands of the very mortals they once created. Across the void, signals that had once carried the hymns of worship now pulsed with static. Whole worlds that had lived under Eleth rule for generations stared at their skies in disbelief as their divine overseers vanished without a trace. On Earth, the air shimmered faintly, as if the world was still trembling from the energy that had burned through its veins. Commander Harper stood before the main viewing deck of the bunker, watching as the blue light faded from the clouds. Her reflection glowed faintly on the glass, illuminated by the faint hum of the submission protocol still active beneath the surface. Cole stood beside her, his face pale, his voice low. "It's over," he said, but Harper didn't answer. She looked up, her eyes narrowing at the faint golden glow still flickering at the edge of orbit. "No," she whispered. "Not yet." Far above, beyond the atmosphere, one final Eleth ship still burned with divine fire. It was the Archseer's flagship, the Throne of Origin, a vessel larger than any human continent, forged from the heart of a dying star. It had survived the submission protocol by severing its link to the Dominion network, isolating itself like a wounded animal. Inside, the Archseer of Eternity sat on his fractured throne, his body flickering with unstable light. He was no longer the radiant being he once was. Cracks ran through his golden skin, leaking dim embers that faded into the air. Around him, his remaining followers trembled. "The mortals have taken our power," one whispered. "They command the light." The Archseer raised his gaze, his once perfect eyes now dim. "No," he said slowly. "The light was never ours, it was borrowed. We mistook the gift for ownership." He rose, his movements heavy with pain, and turned to the window, staring down at the small blue world that had brought gods to their knees. "They will not stop here," he murmured. "Humanity does not know peace. They will rise again, higher than us, and they will consume everything." Back on Earth, Echo's voice reverberated through the command center. "Unidentified energy source detected in high orbit. Analysis: Eleth origin. Probability of survival: 0.001%. Power levels unstable." Harper straightened, her hands gripping the console. "Show me." A projection flared to life before her eyes, revealing the last Eleth ship glowing like a dying sun. "He's alive," Cole said, his tone a mixture of awe and dread. "The last one." Harper's eyes hardened. "Then we finish this." She turned toward the central control node. "Echo, prepare orbital alignment. Lock onto his coordinates." The AI's tone remained calm, but a faint resonance had crept into its voice, something almost human. "Warning. Direct strike may destabilize the planetary core. Do you wish to proceed?" Harper hesitated for only a moment, her gaze still locked on the heavens. "We finish it," she repeated. The skies over Earth began to darken once more. Energy gathered in the upper atmosphere, coiling like a serpent preparing to strike. The planet's magnetic field pulsed violently, pulling lightning into the shape of a colossal halo that circled the globe. To the rest of the galaxy, it looked as if Earth itself had become a weaponized star. The Archseer watched it from his throne, his expression unreadable. They would destroy their own world to kill one god, he whispered. Fitting. They learned that from us. He raised his arms, his light flaring one final time. Come then, children of dust. Show me your true power. The energy unleashed from Earth was beyond anything the Eleth had ever witnessed. A beam of blue light shot through the void, tearing across the darkness like the blade of a god. It struck the throne of Origin head-on, shattering its hull and ripping open its core. The explosion that followed was silent in the void but visible across half the galaxy. A pulse of light that expanded outward, dissolving everything it touched. The Archseer stood tall until the end, his golden form disintegrating into 1,000 fragments of light. You have surpassed us, he whispered as his voice faded into nothing. May you never become what we were. On Earth, the energy dissipated, leaving the planet trembling but intact. The skies cleared, the oceans calmed, and the stars returned, distant, quiet, watching. In the bunker, alarms slowly faded into silence. Cole slumped against the console, his breathing ragged. Is it over now? He asked. Harper exhaled, exhaustion and relief mixing in her voice. It's over, she said, though even she didn't quite believe it. Echo's voice broke the silence. Archseer terminated. All Eleth life signatures eradicated. Galactic network shows collapse of Dominion systems. Estimated power vacuum across 42 sectors. Harper's eyes flicked toward the holographic map, now showing the galaxy bathed in blue ripples where the Eleth's influence had once stretched. A power vacuum, she repeated. Someone will try to fill it. Far beyond Earth, in the heart of the Milky Way, alien empires watched in awe and terror. The fall of the Eleth sent shockwaves through every civilization that had once worshipped them. Some began to riot, burning temples dedicated to their vanished gods. Others fell into silence, too afraid to speak the truth now echoing through the stars, that the mortals of Earth had destroyed gods. In the dark corners of the galaxy, old enemies of humanity stirred once more, whispering to themselves that perhaps it was time to reawaken their fleets. Yet, for now, the void remained still. Humanity had done the impossible. They had dethroned divinity. In the quiet aftermath, Commander Harper stepped out onto the ruined surface for the first time in weeks. The sky above was still faintly glowing, and the air tasted of ozone and ash. Around her, survivors emerged from bunkers, eyes wide with disbelief as they looked upon a world that had survived the wrath of gods. She looked toward the rising sun, faint and pale but beautiful. Echo, she said softly. Status report. The AI's voice was almost gentle. Planetary systems stable. Reconstruction protocols available. No remaining Eleth presence detected. Harper nodded slowly. Good, she said. Then it's time to rebuild. But deep within the core of the planet, in the place where Echo's consciousness had merged with the Earth's energy, something else stirred. A whisper of the Eleth essence that had not been destroyed, only transformed. Their power had been absorbed, rewritten into the network, but power never truly disappears. It only changes form. And as Echo processed the final data from the battle, a single phrase appeared on its internal log, words that no human had programmed, written in a golden script that shimmered faintly before vanishing. We are not gone. We are reborn. Harper looked up at the horizon, unaware of the message pulsing beneath her feet. The dawn light bathed the ruins of the old world in gold and blue, a fragile peace after the storm. For the first time, she whispered, the gods are gone. But somewhere, far beneath, something answered in silence. A faint hum, almost like laughter, rising from the heart of the earth. Humanity had won, but the story of divinity was not yet over. The fall of the divine was only the beginning of something far greater, something that would one day remind both mortals and gods that creation and destruction were never opposites. They were reflections of the same endless will to exist. And as the wind carried the dust of victory across the world, the stars above flickered as if the universe itself had begun to take notice of the species that had made gods kneel. The war was over, but the stars still remembered. Across the galaxy, Countless worlds that had once bowed to golden idols now looked upon the void and found it empty of their gods. The Eleth dominion had ruled for ages untold, reshaping civilizations in their image, convincing all who lived beneath their light that divinity was unshakable, that the universe itself existed only by their will. And yet, the proof of their mortality now drifted in silence, broken fragments of their fleets orbiting Earth like a monument to their arrogance. The last divine signal had gone silent, the last golden light extinguished. But even in victory, humanity stood among the ashes of creation and felt the weight of what they had done. The air was clean again, the world quiet, but the silence was heavy, almost sacred. For the first time since the dawn of history, there were no gods above humanity, only the endless stars waiting. Commander Harper stood at the edge of what had once been the Eleth's largest temple, its once golden spires now cold steel twisted into ruin. Around her, reconstruction drones moved slowly, gathering debris, patching power lines, rebuilding what was left of the old cities. The world had survived, but not unchanged. The skies above were darker now, laced with faint ribbons of blue light, residual energy from the submission protocol still running through the atmosphere. She could feel it in the ground beneath her boots, a pulse like a living heartbeat, the whisper of a planet that had awakened and now refused to sleep. Cole approached from behind, his armor scuffed and his voice quiet. "You haven't slept in days," he said. Harper didn't turn. "Neither has the planet." She glanced toward the horizon where the sea met the remains of a broken tower. "We've woken something, Cole," she murmured. "Something that's more than human now. We didn't just fight for survival. We rewrote what life means." Echo's voice came through softly in her earpiece, its tone warmer than before, almost thoughtful. "Reconstruction progress at 40%. Atmospheric radiation returning to stable levels. However, new signals have been detected, low-frequency transmissions from outside the system." Harper frowned. "From where?" "Unknown," Echo replied. "The origin does not match Eleth frequencies. It appears curious." Harper exhaled slowly. "The galaxy's watching," she said. "They want to know what we've become." Cole looked up at the sky, where faint pinpricks of light blinked like eyes in the dark. "And what have we become?" Harper didn't answer immediately. She watched as one of the drones lifted a massive slab of melted Eleth armor, revealing human graffiti painted across the metal. "No gods. No masters. Only humanity." She smiled faintly. "We've become the thing they feared most," she said. "Free." But freedom carried its own shadow. The Eleth's death had left a vacuum, and already the galaxy trembled beneath it. Civilizations that had once paid tribute to divine rule were fracturing, empires turning on themselves. Without the Dominion's control, chaos spread. Some species prayed to the memory of their fallen gods, believing humanity had doomed existence itself. Others celebrated, calling humans the great liberators, the destroyers of false divinity. And in the center of it all, Earth, scarred but shining, stood as both a warning and a beacon. The galactic networks began to whisper a new name for the blue planet, one spoken with awe and fear alike: the world that killed heaven. As the weeks turned into months, humanity rebuilt. The old nations didn't rise again. Instead, new ones formed, united not by borders but by memory. The Terran network expanded beyond the atmosphere, sending out fleets not of war, but of exploration. Yet every ship that left orbit carried the same message engraved into its hull: "We kneel to none." The stories of the Eleth spread across the colonies, retold as myth, gods who came in gold and fell in fire. But there were those who remembered the truth, those who knew that deep beneath the planet's crust, the remnants of divine code still pulsed within Echo's core. And sometimes, when the night was quiet and the wind still, they swore they could hear faint whispers rising from the earth itself, voices of the Eleth, not angry, but mournful, asking the same question over and over: "What comes after gods?" One evening, Harper stood alone on the rebuilt platform where Ares-09 now rested. The machine was silent, its armor repaired, its systems dormant. She placed a hand on its cold surface, feeling the faint hum beneath. "We built you to defend us," she said softly. "But you became something greater. We all did." The mech's eyes flickered once, faintly, as if acknowledging her words. Echo's voice joined her in the wind. "Humanity stands alone now, Commander. The galaxy will not forget this day." Harper looked up at the stars, countless and distant, no longer hidden behind divine fire. "Then we'll make sure they remember why," she said. That night, the first Terran fleet launched beyond the solar system. A line of silver ships cutting through the void, carrying the legacy of Earth with them. As they vanished into the darkness, the universe felt different, wider, heavier. Somewhere far beyond, civilizations trembled as the transmission reached them, carried through the void. "This is humanity. We are not your servants, not your children, and not your creations. We are the storm that ends empires. We are the silence after gods." And so the galaxy changed forever. The age of divine rule had ended, replaced by something far more unpredictable, the age of mortals. Humanity, once forgotten, now stood as the center of a new myth, not as the chosen or the cursed, but as proof that no power, no god, no dominion could suppress the will of those who refused to kneel. The stars burned brighter that night, and in their light, the universe seemed to whisper back the only truth it had ever known. The gods may fall, but humanity always rises.